All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, taping this on a Thursday evening. Stats by Will is here as he is every single week at this time. We've got Cedric the cat right there in the background, really getting into some self-cleaning. It's his birthday. We let Cedric do whatever Cedric Diggory the cat would like to do on his big day. Did you get the cat any gifts today?
I mean, we got him more food, so I consider that a gift. But no,
More
we'll get
food.
him. I got to get him another toy, and then I don't know. This could be like we don't usually give it a ton of treats because they like to watch
Hmm.
the weight, but this could be like a big treat night for him. Shake
Okay.
out the Temptations bag, really get him going. I don't. I know. So you're a dog owner, so maybe this
Mm.
doesn't apply, but uh, cat owners who listen to this, read the copy on the back of the Temptations bag sometime,
Mm.
because I want to meet the person who wrote the copy because they went nuts.
Hmm.
It is hilarious reading it. I can't recite it by memory. I'd have to go grab the bag, but
Mm.
it's like talking about a cat getting a tasty treat, and it always ends with like yum 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 or something in all caps, and it kills me. I have to see. I'll have to dig up the bag at some point.
I like it. Also, how the heck is it bright and sunny where you're at? And it is literally like Dementors are circling my house on my end before the storm really breaks. And we live, what, 10 minutes from each other? I don't understand what's happening here.
See, it was storming 10 minutes ago here,
Oh, so it's
so
coming this way.
yeah. So it
Okay.
could be in like 5 minutes. You could hear some real big thunder on your end.
Well, Khalees, the dog, who's also here, but not in camera view, will not enjoy that. She's not a big storm girl, I've found.
Mm.
But shout out to Cedric and for the good folks on youtube.com/Jason's podcast who can tune in and see Cedric appearing on this very program. It's a Where's Waldo type deal here. So we're all about it. And as always, we curse the Chinese for inventing gunpowder.
uh, I've been thinking all week about the phrase upright on miracle status
Hmm.
from this latest episode, which is
Yeah.
just one of the most insane things anybody's ever said. But somehow upped by the guy
First off,
saying
eels.
eels are his biggest fear.
Hmm.
Uh, Robin being 30 and saying his dream is to play in the NBA,
Yes.
which fair, aren't we all?
But he was
Um,
still thinking about it. Like that was something he was like, I would like to. I would like to see how I can figure this out. And not just
and
like
then
that would have been cool 15 years ago.
the guy Nathan hires, who falls asleep after 15 minutes and then begins talking about Sasquatch
Oh my
liaisons in the
god.
government.
I was in tears. That's an underrated part of the episode of like how Nathan just the monotone. He said he stayed up all night and then 15 minutes into his shift and then they just panned to him just like that dude went to sleep like on the keyboard. It wasn't even like he
Yeah.
tried to make his like he was just head down on the keyboard. It was that was a wild way to go to sleep. Oh
Yes.
god. It's just it makes me want to use Craigslist like because Nathan is just such a pro at this that like all of these people just exist and I there is now the discourse, capital D, on twitter.com about like, is it actually good what Nathan's doing? And
Hmm.
folks, Will and I are here to tell you it's actually good. It's not that deep. I promise it's not that deep. We don't have to
Yes.
do a 2,000 word New York Magazine article on whether or not it's actually good. I promise the rehearsal is actually good, and no one's going to take away my enjoyment from the rehearsal because it is unbelievable television. And I think it's my favorite thing this year.
I live in a little bit of fear of it getting Rick and Mortied, where it's
Mm,
like an objectively really good show is consumed by the discourse around it on
mm,
twitter.com. And hopefully that won't happen. But the big winner for me of this week is that every time Nathan Fielder trends or the rehearsal is on Twitter, people will post videos of when he did work for the Canadian show This Hour Has 22 Minutes.
mm,
And there's because he was like an interviewer for them, and he'd do little 3 minute segments. And there's one where he visits a laughing coach
mm.
who he tries to find every scenario possible to laugh, including at funerals. Um, there's
As one
one
does.
where he goes, I forget what it is. It's like it's Christmas time in Halifax, and
Mm.
he talks to a baby at first, asking them if they love Santa, and then he does the baby voice to every adult he meets, saying, "Do you love Santa? Do you love Santa?" And it's
Mhm.
just like 50 adults he goes to, and they all look extremely alarmed. It's wonderful.
Fantastic. And I think this is going to be part of our weekly off-season portion of the program. We both
Yes.
are watching each new episode each week. I wish it came out a little bit earlier on Fridays. Like the 11 o'clock
Yes.
is a little bit late.
I have to watch it on Saturday afternoons, to be honest.
Do we know how many parts there are to the part two? Like, is it just a two-parter? Or
There have been some people who have said this is most of the rest of the season, but
oh,
with other rehearsal bits sprinkled in,
hmm,
and then some people are disputing it. So I don't really know, but I know there's
hmm,
6 episodes total,
right.
and that obviously seems like it's set up for multiple, this new storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see where it goes. I love, and I don't feel like this is a spoiler because it's just a theory, but I love the theory I saw the other day where he's going to fire Angela, and it's
Yes.
just going to be him.
Mm-hmm. It's
I think that makes as much sense as anything.
I mean, that's a strong Nathan for you callback. It feels like a little bit there, where he's
Mhm.
like, "I'm just the best man for the job." Well, we saw like the people found his Twitter account, and then the guy's brother throwing him under the bus on
Yes, that
Twitter.com.
was
Just
awesome.
oh my goodness, I think still the best scene from this past year or from this past episode is when Nathan's standing in the background as the roommates are having that domestic dispute, and he oh my goodness. And he's like, what happened back there? And he's like, what did he say? Something about the demon. Like he had the demon
He's
in him or
possessed
something.
by demons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, well, all right.
That
Oh my
whole
god.
sequence leading up to, but really peaking with him not having a license plate because, quote, you don't need one, is just elite brain power. It's that's why people are online and they're like, I can't believe he's real. It's like, obviously he's real. You can't write that character.
Yeah, you can't
It's
do
too
that.
surreal to be written.
100%. I don't think it's
Yeah.
fake. Anyone who's going down that,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just too much. Like you cannot script stuff like this. This is
Yeah.
not a thing.
Angela is not fake either. I mean,
No.
they're like, that's just like your average Hillsong church person, I feel.
I mean, I think she takes it a little bit stronger. I think it's a little bit even more like I don't know if we're gonna get some tongue action. Speaking of
Oh,
tongue
that would be
actions, like
exciting. Well, she
I
did probably with Robin. I don't know.
I think it's in play. I don't think we can rule it out. But we shall
I
see.
want him so I don't think he will, but I want him to make a reappearance so bad.
Oh, I think he comes back. I think he's a fan
Ooh, and
favorite.
he threatens to
We
fight
gotta have
Nathan
him
or
back.
something.
Yeah, I
That would
think
be
he has
good.
to come back. Where he's like, I messed up and I want another chance. Like I could see. I don't think we've seen the last of him, but we'll see.
Hmm.
I hope not, because look, hey, when you crash your Scion going 100 miles per hour, just incredible stuff. The rehearsal, HBO Max. If you want to join in the conversation with us, make sure you watch it and tweet at us. That's by Will or Chase _ Thomas, and let us know what you think because it's fantastic television.
Yes.
What's also fantastic is Tennessee coming out at number 19 in KenPom's program ratings. Will, when you were going over the new ratings that he came out with this year about where the program is over, and it's not just for this one year; it's over several years. When you looked at it, did the list seem about right? Tennessee obviously rises in this regard. Did you like where Tennessee landed? Were there any numbers or anything like that that stood out to you? What did you think about it?
I think it's basically accurate, right? Tennessee is you could within reason call them a low end top 20 program that's not top 10. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a fair assessment of the gig. And it's interesting to see it though because they've risen from they were I believe high 30s at one point, mid 30s, something like that when he first unveiled these 3 years ago.
Mm,
And so now we're looking at them where Tennessee's risen quite a bit, and it lines up really with what's happened. So and it's been nice that they've elevated as others, notably Maryland and Indiana, have started to slide.
mm,
Um, Something you can do in Bart Torvik's site, which is pretty similar to Ken's, is take his ratings over selected group of years. So you can like do multiple year ranges. And if you go from 2015, which is when Rick Barnes took over, Tennessee comes out as the number 17 program in college basketball over the last 7 years, which feels
hmm.
basically accurate.
Yeah.
And if you narrow it down to the last 5 seasons, aka when the sort of rebuild really kicked into gear,
Mm,
Tennessee's 11th. And
hmm.
so I think somewhere in the teens is right. Lower, like in the lower half, is probably apt because, I mean, when you slice it down to 5 years, Tennessee comes out ahead of Kentucky, which I do not think is right.
Mm,
It's funny, but it's not right. So I think, low teens is about accurate. And if Tennessee stays consistent, they're going to continue to rise. I mean, if they're top 15 again, we're going to look at this program ratings list next year and probably see Tennessee 15th, 16th. I'm kind of reminded of when I think of Rick Barnes, I'm reminded of what somebody wrote about Trent Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool after this last season, which is that we spend too much time focusing on what he isn't and not enough time on what he is.
Ooh.
Which is that, people look at the flaws really deeply because they're there. I mean, March is March. Tennessee's had a couple of seasons that didn't close as they'd hoped. Obviously, this one being the most prominent. But Tennessee's had a lot of consistent regular season success. They're always just tops defensively. They've become more fun. They've gotten a lot better at recruiting. And as we've said, it's a process game. If you continue to run back the process like this over and over, one that's clearly getting you really good results for 4 months out of the season, eventually you're going to get good results over a 2-week sample.
Absolutely. If you had to guess who is number one next year, who would you guess?
In the program ratings? It's going to be Duke until they have 4 bad seasons in a row. That gap is just massive. So the gap from number 1 Duke to number 2 Kentucky is the same as 5th place to 15th. So it's just a huge gap. Kentucky's right there, but I mean, Duke did just get done making the Final Four this year, which is, good for them, whatever.
But it was also kind of a weirdly forgettable Duke team and a weirdly forgettable Final Four team. We're not going to remember, we'll remember that North Carolina obviously ended their Coach K's career, but I don't know. they did not really leave an impact. It's weird because you have the number 1 overall pick and everything else. They just kind of floated. I don't know. They did not leave their mark.
Right. They kind of stayed after that Gonzaga win. It was like they were on cruise control for 3 months. And that's good for the March purpose, I suppose, but I didn't really get into it for most of the season. So, I mean, I don't know.
Who's the biggest riser, though? Who do you think will be over a 4-year span? Who do you think is the biggest riser next year?
Well, it has to be Baylor, right? I mean, Baylor was just a, devastated program for so long, and they didn't make their first Final Four until 2021. That if they keep getting these 1 and 2 seeds over and over, naturally they're going to keep rising. And Arkansas is a real threat for this too. I think Arkansas could keep jumping up the list. But even from initial reveal to now, Gonzaga's jumped from 12th to 6th in 2 years. So I think we'll see them continue to rise. Obviously, you'll see North Carolina stop the bleeding because they were initially 3rd and they've fallen to 4th and almost 5th. So I think you'll see them kind of stay steady, but at the top it'll remain solid. But, you could see if Murray State can figure out this coaching transition, them maybe get a little bump in the ratings. I don't know. A lot of potential movers there.
There you go. I like it. What you don't like is Texas A&M's non-conference schedule. Will, you tweet? I think you texted me this. Tell the good folks why you may or may not have some capital T takes on Texas A&M's at a conference schedule.
So this is a team that just got left out of the NCAA tournament in part, and not entirely, but in part because their non-conference schedule ranked 308th in strength of schedule, which is generally, unless you're winning every single game, not a great strategy for getting in. I mean, Texas Tech did it last year, but Texas Tech also went bonkers in the best conference in the sport. So, I mean, Texas A&M did not quite have that advantage. But I want to read you off the Torvik rankings of each team on the schedule as of now.
Yep.
This is from November to December. And I can't recall if they're in a Big 12 crossover or not. But this is the ones that they actually had control over scheduling. 235, 122, 196. This is a non-conference tournament thing. 77 or 139. 94. 143, 98, 275, 36. That's Memphis. 200, 281, 286. So that's a total of 1 projected team in the top 75 on the entire non-conference schedule. I mean, last year's was bad. They were 308th. And last year they played 3 top 50 teams. So imagine what it's going to be this year if all of those rankings come out pretty close to fruition. They could be like in the 330s, 340s in non-con, and then you really got to be good in SEC play to overcome that. But I mean, I would understand this more if we were still in the RPI era. Like, of all teams, actually, Texas Tech used to do this under Tubby Smith, where they would schedule like teams that would win 14 games in the SWAC or MEAC or the lower conferences, because the RPI would give you a big boost if you played teams that got a lot of wins. It wasn't like KenPom or anything where it was like the actual quality of the team. It's just like how many games did that team win? Texas A&M is using what I think is kind of an outdated schedule strategy, or just one that's a little more hopeful than it should be. Like, I understand not wanting to lose non-conference games when you can make it up in what's going to be a really good SEC. But at the same time, you have got to schedule more than one clear-cut quality game. And that number 77 is going to be in a non-conference tournament where it's like you may or may not play them. Like, you could end up playing UMass instead. So I don't understand quite what it is Buzz is doing. And it's a little bit of a disappointment because I thought that they would, schedule up a little bit, given that this team is going to be their best in a while. But I don't know. We'll be left to see what happens. But I was quite disappointed to see this when, not to use Tennessee as the example every time, but Tennessee is consistently scheduling really interesting non-conference games, or Kentucky or Alabama.
I mean, it's also just, I think, a recruiting tool.
Yes.
I think it's like you want those kids in the building. Like Tennessee obviously brought in big names for the Arizona game. You want to show off your program and where you're going in a big game atmosphere where ESPN or whoever is there. And, you can have like, it's just a big time crowd atmosphere that they're really into it and stuff like that. Like, that's just, you can't be scared of those kind of games. You have to book them, and like you said, like you can make that up in SEC play. Like even if you stumble a little bit and out of conference, if you're strong in a strong conference and you bounce back, then you'll be fine. Like it's just, you can't schedule scared like that anymore.
Well, also it's like I understand some of the scheduling aspects. Like Prairie View A&M could very well win the SWAC because they're always a pretty solid contender. But like, considering that we don't judge based on wins anymore, we have the net to judge like objective quality. Why wouldn't you schedule like North Texas or Sam Houston State or even Texas State, who could have won the Sun Belt last year? Like, schedule teams that we know are going to be better than the ones that are on your schedule. I understand they're tougher tests and you have a greater chance of losing, but if you win, the rewards are much greater. And if you lose to North Texas, it doesn't matter as much. It might matter because you lost an in-state school and people care about that. But objectively on a resume, nobody's going to blink twice. That would be like a home loss to, say, last year's that would be like a home loss to like Florida last year. Nobody would have been that upset.
Yeah, I would agree. When we look at Justin Edwards, he does not pick the Tennessee Volunteers. It seems like that's where it was headed for weeks, and a lot of folks were pretty certain that he was going to end up in Lexington. I don't think it's a big loss for Rick Barnes. I think they took a big swing. Obviously, I just think it's one of those things where Tennessee is in a good spot with where they're at in their recruiting. Gainey still is just a great asset to have in a multitude of levels, especially like in North Carolina and other areas around the Southeast. The recruiting, obviously, like you cannot get a 5-star top 5 guy year over year, generally speaking. Like Kentucky is just Kentucky. If you lose, like if they lost to Arkansas for Justin Edwards, I think that would have stung. Like that would have been really like, that shouldn't have happened. Or even Florida. Now, part of me, like, it does suck because it seems like Tennessee did the better job recruiting him and did it better for a longer period of time. Didn't really come down to that. And I don't, it's just always going to be hard to, like, even though Rick Barnes has great history against Coach Cal and this program, kids don't really care about that sort of thing. And it's just getting guys to the league. It speaks for themselves. Like he can do that. Like that is still going to be the trump card until Keon Pops or Pops or Kennedy Pops in Memphis, or like it's one thing to get these guys to the league. That's why you're getting a 5-star or two every year. But if you want the unless they live in the state already and like grew up in Tennessee and or Memphis guys or Knoxville, Nashville, whatever, like you're just gonna have to have some lottery guys. You're gonna have to have a stronger track record on that front, and it's just baby steps, man. Like look where we are as a program. Like it's really good, but losing to Kentucky, Duke, some of the big dogs in recruiting, I just Gonzaga, whatever. I be all that upset. What do you think?
No, I mean, he's going to lose in the round of 64 anyway to St. Peter's, so what's it
Oof.
to me?
Oof.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's hard to really get upset about these. Tennessee has lost recruiting battles to Kentucky for most of my life, except on like guys Kentucky just whiffed on, like Chris Lofton.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm not like shocked by this. It's a bummer, but the what's interesting about him is that we see these numbers of him being like this highly rated recruit. And obviously, you won him, but the scattering report from On3 on him is really interesting. Where
Mm-hmm.
the hint is like he could be the best defensive player in his class on opening night, which would have been an awesome asset to have.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like he's got a long way to go in offense. His best attributes are off ball cutting and catch and shoot attempts, neither of which is like something you do yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't scream 5-star recruit offensively off the page, but the thing you're looking for is the potential, though, and he's got loads of it. But this is an interesting one because when I read that report, what I instantly think is guy who is going to be a lot better in the NBA than he is in college.
Hmm.
So where it's just like college basketball doesn't really 100% make sense for your skill set, but once you get into the NBA and you have like a team that can really design their rebuild around you or fit you into the right spot, you really blossom. And I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if that could be more up for him than the college level. I won't be surprised if I mean, he's got like SEC Defensive Player of the Year potential,
Mm-hmm.
which is scary. But offensively, it sounds like he's just got a lot of big steps to take. So I'm curious to see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, in terms of a Tennessee versus Kentucky recruiting battle, if anything, it probably confirms Kentucky just has deeper NIL pockets. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Kentucky's obviously the bigger program, so I'm not surprised when Tennessee loses that battle. But given where it ended up heading, Kentucky probably just has a group of people more willing to commit more money, which is totally fine. I mean, if your program's ready to do that, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I feel like that's kind of where they've been able to start winning these big time battles again. Whereas pre NIL, that at the end of that 9 and 16 year, Kentucky was really struggling to get like the high end lottery recruits again. And I know like their highest one this year didn't even play a second of basketball for them. But I feel like now that NIL is back, you can sell the program and you can sell that. Oh, and you're going to get paid a lot if you go here. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like giving the powers more power in a way,
Mm-hmm.
while also giving everybody else a chance. I don't know how to feel about it, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not sweating it all that much, so we'll see. What is interesting is this is like kind of what I was just talking about with Edwards, where it's like Omaha. Do we know how to pronounce his last name?
Uh, Omaha Omaha
I haven't
Billups.
heard it out loud yet, so I'm gonna say Biliu,
I think they should call
Biliu.
him Omaha Bill because it makes him sound like a Western character.
Okay, Omaha Bill it is. He commits to Iowa State. He's a top 10 recruit, but he's an Iowa kid. Like that's just
Yeah,
part of it. It's just like that's what you need. So if you're gonna get in that, like you need some kind of luck there, a little bit if you're Barnes on that front, and it might happen in Memphis or Nashville. I have my doubts about Knoxville putting
yeah.
out.
Given
Yeah,
basically all of history.
yeah, but good players. We've had good players come out of here. And I mean, BJ Edwards, he should be a really good player for UT this upcoming year and for the next couple of years. But there's a difference. There's a different tier there.
Yeah,
And there's the ceiling. Like I just no offense to the Farragut Admirals, putting a lot of baseball players at UT in the draft, but in terms of basketball talent, we just have not really seen it, like you said, in our lifetime. But it's a big get for Iowa State, who I mean, it's amazing what difference a year makes, right? Like this
mhm.
program was in into last year, and they've completely flipped it. They're a tournament team. They go deep tournament. folks obviously did not have. They were the surprise team of the Big 12 last year, and I think they righted the ship where things were really, because it was so weird names where no one was against the hire at the time of the last coaching staff. No one was like, what are they doing? It just did not go well. And they obviously changed gears in, and it's fine. They bounce around a portal. Uh, like, we'll see what happens losing. I mean, Iowa State, it's a big get for them, I think. Anything else to say other than like they're in a really good spot, and it's kind of wild to think about where they were a year and a half ago versus now.
Yeah, it's got to be really nice for a top 15 recruit in any given class to grow up under an hour from your campus. I truly do not know what that is like, so that's got to be really cool.
Yep.
Knoxville parents, please encourage your children to play basketball. But he feels very Iowa when you read the scouting report. Very thick, very physical, and apparently will bully most underclassmen he goes up against. On
Not
the
afraid
court,
of a
not in
cornfield.
classrooms. We are not happy with bullying, but on the court, we love it. Anyway, the problem is that, so supposedly, at least in terms of like true skill, not just like I can overpower you, in the sort of Kofi Coburn way. He doesn't really have a ton to offer offensively yet. Like, his shot is still coming around, his touch in general is still coming around, but he's a big, huge guy who is really good defensively. Kind of, not a surprise. Somebody who's hard to move around is generally going to have a really high floor on D. But I don't know if you could sort of grow an Iowa State player in a lab and have him be a 5-star recruit. This sort of feels like it, at least in terms of the image they're building now. I think it's a good get for them. And, it's always nice when recruits get to go to non-traditional places where they're going into a good situation. This isn't something like, Patrick Baldwin going to Milwaukee where his dad coaches. This is like Omaha Bill goes to a school that's, on the up and up, has a plan, and will be able to create something really cool around him.
Yeah, we'll see. Are they a tournament team again for you next year? Are they pretty much a lock for you?
Not a lock. I think that it's going to be more or less the same thing where they were a 10 or 11 seed, but they'll be frisky yet again. I mean, I need their offense to be about 75% more watchable than it was last year, because it was a disgusting affair. To quote Joe Buck, a disgusting act. As everybody not named Tyrese Hunter was fake mooning the camera. But the defense is going to be stout yet again. I'm not going to be shocked by that. But yeah, I think like 10, 11 seed, they'll be sort of right in that same range. It'll be kind of hard, frankly, for them to top Act 1, but Act 2 should be interesting in a very new and fun way.
I like it. Who is our KenPom season review this week?
It is North Carolina.
Ooh, Have you heard about them? Have you heard about this? Pretty good. They went to the national title last year. This upstart group, the Tar Heels, I believe is what they're called.
Yes. New team that nobody has heard of in college sports. I mean, it's an interesting team to assess, because at the start of the tournament, per Ken's rankings, they had a 0.4% chance of making the title game. Success for them would have been like and really at the time, I think everybody viewed it as this: if they made the Sweet 16, the entire season was a success, because for a large portion of the season, they were garbage on defense. I mean, prior to Tennessee getting out of the mud, Tennessee scored 89 on them, and it did not look like it was difficult at all. That was the type of defense they had. And they seemed to right the ship a bit towards the back end of the year. But it really kind of started to flip, in January. They lost by 22 on the road to Wake Forest. They were 12-6, 4-3 in the ACC. And then the rest of the way, including the NCAA tournament, they went 17-4. They got a lot better at hunting their shots on offense. They completely owned the defensive boards. Number 2 nationally in defensive rebounding percentage, never fouled. And for better or for worse, they really locked in on having a 5 with an occasional 6,
Mm-hmm.
and they rode that starting 5 for all it was worth. I mean, you think back to that national title game against Kansas where, 6 guys played 198 of the possible 200 minutes. Justin
Mm-hmm.
McCoy made like a spot cameo, but you had like Puff Johnson out there literally puking on the floor and then just still playing. You
Mm-hmm.
had Armando Bacot's knee getting shredded and then just still playing. You had guys
Mm-hmm.
who were taking like concussion level hits and still playing. They were like, it was strange to call them an underdog because it's North Carolina, but you just could not kill them no matter what you did. I mean, they could have been down and out so many times, blowing the 25-point lead to Baylor, which everybody
Mm-hmm.
seems to have forgotten about. They trailed to UCLA with 2 minutes left. They trailed for a significant amount of the game against Duke, and then they
Mm-hmm.
blew the 15-point lead to Kansas. And it looked like they were dead in the water with 10 minutes left, and then just never went away. Could
Mm-hmm.
have sent it to overtime with one made 3. I mean, they were such a fascinating team, and this is why, I kind of joked about it after the tournament ended, but Hubert Davis really should have considered retirement because it's like, how do you top that act?
Mm-hmm.
How do you top going in as an 8 seed, getting literally within one made shot of the national title,
Mm-hmm.
ending your rival's career twice, really, ending it at home, and then
Mm-hmm.
ending it in the Final Four? Uh, I don't understand how they can possibly top. I know, like, yes, they could win the title, but on just a basic level, how do you top all of that in the second act? It just
That
seems like, and I understand, like, we're sort of hyping them up to be this team. I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, everybody's poll more or less is like Gonzaga 1, North Carolina 2,
mm-hmm.
or flipped, North Carolina 1, Gonzaga 2. And I get that. I understand
Mm-hmm.
the hype and potential there. But North Carolina entered the NCAA tournament 30th in KenPom, and I feel like we just did this exact thing with UCLA last year, where UCLA was like fine, good, probably underrated heading into the tournament, and then they just got hot at the right time, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, UCLA #2 in the nation entering the next season."
Mm-hmm.
And then UCLA was a 4 seed who lost in the Sweet 16 and never really looked like a top 5 team at any point. Are we kind of at that point with UNC, do you feel, where it's like, yes, they're going to be good, but is there this potential of overhype where it's going to just be nigh impossible to top that first act?
I think it just depends on what lens you view success through. Where it's like with the continuity and what they're bringing back, I think a Sweet 16 at bare minimum should be
Mm-hmm.
expected. But then
Yeah.
we know how it goes. Like once you're in that, like we'll see. Like it's just gonna be really hard to run the gauntlet all over. But if they're a Sweet 16 team, they're last year they were I think 18 and 35th in adjusted offense and adjusted defense. Like if you're a little bit more consistent, if you build up that continuity and you use that to your advantage, where with the portal and everything else, like they have an advantage that a lot of programs around the country would kill to have. I think their defense should be better. I think we look at that. I'm curious if the tempo is still as fast as they played last year, which is kind of interesting because a lot of teams, like when you have a Baycott and like their legs just kind of going out from under them, especially in that championship game, I wonder if they prioritize a slower style next year to kind of save themselves. But I I think it just really comes down to what you look at as success. Is like, do you expect championship or bust? Then yeah, that's probably going to be underwhelming because it's just really really hard to win a national title. But
Yes.
if you're if you're an older team with a lot of continuity and a good head coach and a good rotation, then GG or no GG, like this should be a Sweet 16 team at the very least. And I think that's the goal is to get there. You win get out of opening weekend and then just see what happens the rest of the way. And I think that's kind of, I mean, Tennessee fans have been dying for that for years. Like that's all you want to do is get out of opening weekend and then we'll see what happens. Like then it's just all fool's money, fool's gold.
Yes.
And I think that's what you should look at it if you're a North Carolina fan. Anything less is like, man, that's a bummer. We should not have lost in round of 32 or 64. Like that should not have happened.
Yeah.
That's like a Kentucky type deal for me.
And honestly, UCLA wouldn't be a terrible comp just because, like, at least in terms of results, like UCLA still finished 11th in KenPom this past
Right.
year. They were really good.
It just
For
wasn't as
most of the season.
magical.
Yeah, they just didn't get the Final Four again, and that's okay. I mean, like, if North Carolina, I mean, honestly, if North Carolina is just a top 10 team for most of the year and with potential to be top 5, that's a really good follow-up act and better than pretty much any UNC fan would have guessed, in January.
I agree. You have an article. I think we end on this, Mr. Will Warren. You have a new piece that you wrote on the 60-point scorer. What can you tell us about it?
So I don't know if people know this. Have you heard about this? Whatnot. There has not been, and it honestly surprised me every time I think about this, given where basketball is headed. Nobody has scored 60 points in a Division I men's basketball game in 13 and a half years. The last time was January 2009. It was Ryan Toulson at Utah Valley. And so given where we've headed sort of as a basketball culture, where we've shifted towards offensive friendly, like when I looked at this for the article, NBA scoring has jumped 11% in the last 13 years. College basketball lower, but still 3% more than 13 years ago. But nobody's even really come close. I mean, the highest scoring affair since 2009 was a 55-point game that required 3 overtimes. And so I was just curious, I wanted to find out, why doesn't this happen anymore when people shoot better than ever, guards are more athletic than ever, and frankly, games are closer than ever, and there's more scoring. And I talked to Ryan Toulson, the last guy to score 60. It took him 4 overtimes, and he played all 60 minutes. But, he had some interesting insight into it where he says, one, he did not know he is the last guy to score 60. I was the first person to tell him that, which is hilarious. I would go around telling everybody that. If my name was on Wikipedia as the most recent person to do it, everybody would hear about that every day. But he thinks it's going to happen. It's probably going to require some overtime work to get there, though. When I looked at people who have scored 52 plus points in the last 13 years, the average amount of on-court time was 45 minutes. So you're looking at minimum 1 overtime and really more like 2 to have a reasonable shot. But on the right night, it can happen. And I wrote this because I haven't seen anybody else write it, and I want there to be something for when it does eventually happen, whether it's now, whether it's in 5 years. We've got something to look back on. So there's a few decent candidates, sort of led by Darius McGee at Liberty, a little 5'9" guy who can shoot the lights out. Antoine Davis at Detroit, who is the only good player in that team. And some other interesting pieces, like Max Asmus at Oral Roberts is back. Jelly Walker at UAB has a chance. My
Our
favorite
guy, Andy
name on the
Kennedy,
list.
getting an extension. Shout out to him.
Yeah, my favorite name on the list, Jordan Dingle from Penn. Just an elite name. That's the guy who I want to get it, because how good would it be if Jordan Dingle wrote himself into history for something other than his name?
True.
But I mean, I've lived long enough to see, like, and Ryan Toulson mentioned this, the Jody Meeks 54-point game against Tennessee. If that game had been closer, I mean, Meeks dropped 54 in regulation. If that game even goes into 1 overtime, he probably gets 60 plus. And so it's just like, it's got to be the right night and the right circumstances. But I do hope it happens, because it'll be really cool when it happens. I was just puzzled to see, like, it's been 13 plus years since it happened, and there had never been a gap of longer than 8 years before. So,
okay. Do you think it happens this year?
No, because I want to be wrong. Because I feel like whenever I make big predictions, they don't go well. And so I'm going to say no in the hopes that this is a reverse jinx. I want it to happen so bad, because it'll just be a cool experience for everybody.
Well, it will definitely be a game that no one's watching.
It will be. And that was the fun thing when I looked for this piece, because I've got the Synergy Sports subscription. So it happened twice that season. Toulson did it, and then Ben Woodside of North Dakota State.
Yeah.
That's a name that, like, only their fans or Kansas fans would know, because he tortured Kansas in the tournament. Combined between those two teams, they had 5 games televised, whether on TV or on streaming services. That's the beauty about if it happens now. It will be on ESPN Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Stadium or God knows whatever, like Peacock Plus minus, whatever they're called now. That sounded very boomer. I apologize. But it will be like you'll see video of it. There's no video of those games, which is a real bummer.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I've got. Is there anything
I
else
got
you'd like?
one more thing to promote.
I like
Those
it.
one Knoxville SC boys who
Oh,
made
here we
the
go. Yeah.
quarterfinals of the
Mm-hmm.
USL2. Shout out to them. First
Mm-hmm.
season in club history, and you make the final 8. They get to host the quarterfinal and semifinal rounds at Austin East this weekend. If they can get to Sunday, I feel like they're going to do it.
And if you're walking around downtown Knox or North Knox, West Knox, like you can feel it in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's pretty electric around Knoxville right now.
It's cool. Like people seem to actually care, which is nice. I was worried that they wouldn't. And like when you look at attendances for some of the USL clubs that are in like the low 200-300s a match,
Mm-hmm.
like the fact that one Knox is drawing 2,000 to 2,500 people is pretty cool. So
Here's the problem. My Atlanta Silverbacks blood runs pretty deep. That is something I've been to for my dad's birthday over a decade ago when they played by Spaghetti Junction. For my real ATLians, we know about that. So it's just asking a lot for me to sacrifice the amount of investment emotionally that I've put into the Atlanta Silverbacks over the years. Founded in 1994, people forget, but an all-time great nickname, Atlanta Silverbacks, great logo. Shout out to the Atlanta Zoo, but yeah, I don't know. I'm still like weighing my options there because I want to run it by the Silverback contingent back home and then see what they think about one Knoxville and if it's okay to move on because they're gone. They're not even a thing anymore. They dissolved in 2015. So I think I was there. I want to say I had to have been there that last year with my dad. If I had to guess, he's going to listen to this and text me and let me know which what it was. But I'm pretty certain we were there the last year or the year before. But yeah, it was in a really cool, secluded spot. But I will say the one Knoxville vibes and attendance and energy is a little bit higher than what it was for the Silverbacks.
yes, pretty good crowd, good experience. They have their own little chants that I'm trying to learn.
Mm-hmm. Can you do one?
There's one to Tears for Fears shout because the keeper is named Troutman, or
Okay.
his last name is, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
Trout, keep the ball out. It's like you're the thing we're talking about. Come on, we're talking to you. Come on, that thing. Great song.
Yeah.
Because
Do
Tears
you
for Fears are a
partake?
great band. I try to. I don't know all the chants yet. Is the problem because they kind of come up with new ones each game. But there's some like basic everybody does like their version of when the Saints go marching in, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like when one Knox goes marching in. Like Nashville does it, Atlanta I think does it. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody's got their own version of that. But they got like some cool little player specific ones too.
I'm just not cool. I've never done that. I've never been a like just go along and yell. I don't make noise at games. It's not really my deal. I'm not a
I
yeller.
I'm a big guy who's just like oh or yeah. No, I don't like really do chants. Like I don't sing along to fight songs really.
I pace. Like
Hmm.
I'll pace if I need to get up and walk around, or I'll just get like jittery in my seat, where I'll just like I make these face. I'm like I think without trying to be, and my family does this, where it's like I make a lot of Jalbert faces, and it's probably not good for my like, and that's probably in life though that they can do it, where I make a lot of like, and then I'll be like, and I'm sure it's a lot more egregious in my day to day, and probably not the best. Is I don't really have a strong poker face, is what they're saying. It's pretty easy to see if I'm in on something or out on something, and I think when I'm watching a Tennessee game or anything else, I'm just like I'm definitely standing, and I'm just there's a lot of
Hmm. There, I
not
calmed
audible.
down.
There's no audible stuff.
I've calmed down over the years. Used to be a big "come on" guy, but that's lowered. I don't really
I
do that
want to
anymore.
see this. I could not imagine you being a come on guy.
No, there's a real stereotype to that, and I've tried my
Yeah.
hardest to distance.
I just am. I'm a never get involved person, and I'm a don't cause a scenes person. Like I have
Mm,
always had a big thing about causing a stir in public, where you never want to be the main character in a public issue. Like that's just never what you want to do, and that's just my ethos. Like I was at a Oak Ridge Clinton game last year, and I remember there was this touchdown club guy. I don't think he even had a kid on the team, but he was really, really aggressive and like was yelling a lot in front of my buddy Ethan and I as we were watching the game. And this man yelling at 16, 17-year-olds, he's like, "You guys suck!" and just yelling. And I, I just, I'm like, that's not me. I could never wrap my head around getting to that point as a human being that you
mm.
can just yell at a bunch of kids that they suck and whatever. It
Yeah,
just blows my
not
mind.
for me. I
No.
do prefer the quieter state, well, especially at home where it's like nobody's really there. You're like nobody's yelling with you.
Yeah. But the thing too is like you want to push it. Like I want them all to do it. It's way more fun in Neelam when it's rocking and stuff. So I'm like, thank you all for doing the thing that I don't want to do, so that I feel I can enjoy it and not
Yeah.
partake.
Now I do. There's a little ref abuse from
Mm,
me that will go
okay.
on at like basketball games,
Like in the
mostly
game.
mostly whenever Pat
I'm
Adams is
saying
in
when you're at
attendance.
the game, when you're at
Yeah, when I'm at
TBA.
the game, not from home. At home,
Okay.
it's just like, well, you're just yelling into the void. What's the point? But when
You should go
everybody
to the
else
Thomas
is yelling
household.
at Pat Adams, yeah, I want to join in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think
but like player specific,
mm,
you know, complaints or whatnot that are vocalized, not a fan of.
mm.
So
I
it's
will
about
say
the team. It's not about the player.
I think the one thing I did in this past year, there was some Georgia fans pretty close to me at the Georgia Tennessee game, and I was cold. I was that game. I don't know if people remember just how cold that game got. Like it was horrific. How cold it got, and I thought I was pretty bundled, and I was not bundled enough. Like I thought I was gonna die of frostbite, and I remember like this group, and they were just really cocky early on. And when Tennessee scored, and I bet them, I was like, I guarantee we're winning at the end of the first quarter. And they're like, no, no one's scoring us. I'm like, okay, well, here's the deal. Like, we're going to be winning at the first quarter. Now, the rest of the game, probably not, but we're going to win. I may or may not have been like some Kirk Cousins. You like that? Like, when the first quarter ended, there may have been some me chirping at Georgia fans over the early results. And look,
Mm,
banners hang forever. We scored 17 on Georgia last year. It's a
there
big
you
deal.
go.
People forget.
That did happen.
Yeah,
Nobody thinks about quarters 2 through 4.
that's
Those are fake quarter. Those are a false concept created by the Sasquatch liaisons.
there you go. Speaking of Sasquatch, there's a Boy Scout camp thing happening all week on campus. Like I had to go to campus this afternoon, and I'm walking through it, and it's just a lot of stuff going on. It brought back some bad memories. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I was just like getting PTSD as I'm walking through Hodges and everything. It was just it was not my jam. So if you're a student, watch out for that this week because there are campers everywhere.
That sounds terrible. Over there. Children are not much my thing in general. So
Yeah. There you go. Stats by Will. Go check out his new article on statsbywill.com. Follow him on Twitter if you're not already. Stats by Will. Um, well, happy birthday, Cedric. Cedric. He can't hear me.
oh, he's passed out.
Look at him. He's just passed out.
His cheek is smushed into the little carrier thing here.
There you go. Khaleesi just woke up at my chanting, so she's awake. For the dog and cat people, and Will Warren, thank you as always, my friend, and I will talk to you next week.
Thank you.